Jeez. More than usual today. Must be something going on. Good morning.
Doug, can you confirm that Carson Wentz fractured vertebrae? Is it one? Is it
Here's what I can confirm, that he has a stress injury, that this thing has evolved over time, and it requires 0 surgery to heal.
Stress fracture.
A stress injury, yeah. You can word it how you want.
Well,
Fracture, injury.
Okay. And when did he first start complaining about it, and when did the team first become aware that he had a
It's
back
just
issue?
evolved over time.
So you
Listen,
don't
I'm not
recall when
going
it
to get
happened
into a
first?
ton of specifics on this. You know that right now. So
Is he playing Sunday?
he's questionable.
Questionable.
Listed as questionable.
Why can't you go into specifics about your franchise quarterback's
Because I don't think it needs to be aired out publicly. It's an in-house decision, and that's the way we're going to keep it. And it's in Carson's best interest right now.
There's been questions about, the discovery of the fracture and how that all comes to play. Can you lend any insight into that? Have you guys been giving tests periodically?
What I know is that this thing has evolved over time.
Has it impacted your play calling at all in terms of, rolling him out to the side or anything like that, knowing
No.
that he's dealing with a sore back? No.
what was your understanding of, you mentioned it happened over time, what was your understanding of the injury during the last few games?
Again, this thing has just evolved. So, we were rolling.
Does that mean it's gotten worse since he appeared in the injury report in mid-October? Has it gotten worse since that point?
Has he felt worse?
Yes.
No.
Is his placement on the injury report in October is this injury related to the one when he first popped up on the injury report in October?
He has a stress injury, evolved over time, and he requires no surgery. I'm not asking or answering any more questions about it. We're playing the Rams in 2 days, if you guys haven't figured this out. So he's listed as questionable, and that's the way it is.
Okay. Will he make a full recovery?
Yes.
Do you know how long that recovery will take?
Don't want to put a timetable on it, but it could be 3 months, possibly.
If you decide before you leave that you're going to go with Nick, is it possible that you won't take Carson on the flight because of his back?
No, he's traveling.
If the injury is there a risk to putting him back out there? You mentioned he's questionable, which would theoretically give him a chance to play. Is there a risk in further injury if you put him out there?
If we put him out there, there has to be 100% that there's no risk of anything further.
So why
That's
wasn't
what
that
I'm
being?
at.
So
Is
it's
there-
questionable.
But is there a
So
risk
why
of
was
that?
that the standard then throughout the season? If this has evolved over time, then it means he's been playing with an injury over time. So why wasn't that the standard when the injury first came up? Are you following what I'm asking?
Yeah, you're asking when it happened,
No, but for something to
and
evolve,
for something to evolve, it takes time. And when is that window? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Where is
but
that
for
window?
something to evolve, it means it didn't happen this past week. Therefore, it's been evolving, like you said. So, from the time when it started evolving, why wasn't this identified then?
Because at the time, probably it wasn't identified as a stress injury or stress fracture, as you said.
Okay. So as you look at that from an organizational perspective, is there concern that you had him out there while this was getting worse?
No, because he was. There were no symptoms. He was 100%. He practiced. He was not on the injury report. For this. So yeah, I had no issue with that.
To the naked eye, it seemed like he was not running as much. And actually, not
Well, I
to the naked
answered
eye,
that
he was not
earlier in the
running.
week. I answered this earlier in the week about the Dallas Cowboy D-line and how teams know Carson runs. Rush lanes change, rush patterns change, blitzes change to keep a guy like Carson Wentz. And same as I think I even brought up Michael Vick. Teams would blitz and rush Michael Vick differently to keep him in the pocket. So you can't just say, well, he's not running more. Well, put some credit back on the defense and say, hey, they rush a little bit differently too.
World-class production throwing the ball down the field. He was missing throws that typically he does make. I mean, did you guys see all this and think that maybe?
Well, we saw the missed throws, but we're not linking the two together. We just got to get better at making the throw.
On Monday, you said he's feeling as healthy as he's ever been. Was that your understanding when you got back from Dallas, that there were no issues with his health?
Yeah.
Now, for Carson to be able to play on Sunday night, wouldn't he have to go through the same kinds of tests, possibly out in LA for that to happen? And what would the feasibility of that be?
Well, I mean, we're still gathering a lot of information, so the feasibility is probably pretty high.
When did you guys discover the fracture?
When?
Yes.
He had a test done on Tuesday,
And then the results came back on.
and then everything since that point. So everything's evolved up until Tuesday. Until you do a scan, you don't know.
You've mentioned before that, ankle's connected to the leg. Well, is he compensating for the knee? Does this
No.
have anything to do with?
No.
Have they made any link?
No.
So with the test on Tuesday, was that something that happens like regularly, or did he complain about some sort of discomfort?
We do a lot of testing each week on a lot of players. We've done Tim Jernigan. We do all our we've done Sidney Jones. We've done all the guys that have been injured. Avante Maddox. We do them all every week. And Carson's no different. He's been on the injury report from the beginning of the season for other reasons. And so we continue to monitor. And again, that's part of us gathering the information that we need to make sure the guys are ready to go.
You said at the beginning of the season that you're married to him for the next decade. This is his fourth injury of varying levels in 4 years, dating back to his last year of college. So how concerned are you about that going forward?
I think it's a pretty, to ask the question now after 3 years and the injury situation that's going on. I think you guys can sit here and say that it's probably a red flag. A lot of injuries occur because of the nature of the sport, the violent hits of this sport. Guys know exactly what they are getting into, even at a young age. And Carson's no different. But moving forward, we just got to make sure that we do a better job of protecting him, starting with the offensive line, starting with the backs. He does his part by getting the ball out of his hand. I do my part by maybe incorporating more screens and quick throws to help that. But it's not in any way going to change the aggressiveness of my nature or his moving forward.
This isn't the first injury we've had guys, one thing lead to another. There's been a period of recovery, et cetera. Is your comfort with the training staff, is that still at a certain level?
It's at a high level because of the communication that we have, myself, Howie, our docs, Jerome, Shireen, everybody involved. We've had a lot of really good conversations, a lot of good protocols put in place for every injured athlete that we've had this season.
As a follow-up, Doug,
Listen, that's a doctor question. I'm not getting into those. That's a medical. I'm not getting into that.
I recognize as I asked this that you're not on the medical staff, but
Thank you.
but they're not
for
up
recognizing
here.
that.
No, but they're not up here, and Howie's not up here, so we ask you.
I'm the head football coach.
Exactly.
And
So-
so I get the pleasure of coming
So-
up here.
so-
That's my job.
Yeah,
That's what I have to do.
So as you look at the injuries this season, Carson among them, have you noticed a trend in injuries that have regressed or have gotten worse?
Specifically?
Darren Sproles, Tim Jernigan, Jalen Mills showed up in a walking boot a few weeks into the injury. Sidney Jones has re-injured himself 3 times in games this year. I understand it's a violent sport.
There's a fine line with guys that can return to play that have an injury, and there's a fine line of how far you want to push an athlete to test him to see where he's at physically through his protocol. And we have a protocol. Each athlete has their own, based on injury, has their own protocol, and we have to measure where he is. I don't know, stage 3, stage 4, however many stages there are in that protocol. And so for these athletes, one, for them internally, they want to get back out on the field. Sproles wants to get back out. Jalen wants to get back out. Tim wants to get back out, the guys you mentioned. So we're going to put them through a sort of our own internal tests, right? And so there's a fine line to how much we can push. And then sometimes within that pushing from, whether it's doctors, it could be, the trainer, the player himself, there could be setbacks because we're trying to see where the athlete is. And that happens. That happens with everybody in the National Football League. So that's kind of what's happened. But I don't think that we've had a setback or a step back at all with any of that.
Doug, since you're the only person from the organization that is up here answering questions about the medical staff, one question that's never been answered is why were the top 2 doctors fired after you guys won a Super Bowl?
I'm not even going to comment on that either.
Doug, you've
Had a back fracture before. You know the nature of back.
Mine was different.
I know it is. Back,
Totally different.
and that's where the questions go. And this is a stress fracture, which I've seen termed as a trickier form of a back fracture. Is that your understanding? What is your long-term concern when it comes to Wentz?
The information is that it required, number one, no surgery, which is a positive. Mine didn't need surgery either, but mine was completely different. Mine was a transverse process that was broke off with some other damage back there. So 2 different injuries. And the fact that he doesn't need surgery on this, I mean, is the best news that you could possibly have on anybody that has a stress fracture or a stress injury in this case.
But in terms of the long-term outlook, I mean, is there still a level of haziness because of the trickiness that comes with, especially
No. As long as we
stress
take the proper steps to make sure that all our players are 100%, then no.
Why not shut him down?
Okay, thank you.
I'm out.